Comparison leads us into a place of resentment. It leads us into a place of bitterness, strife, gossiping, knowingly and unknowingly tearing down the people and the things of the kingdom. And what we don't realize is that our hearts now have become infected and contaminated by sin, and we are no longer fruitful and wonder why things have become stagnant in our lives. Why certain areas of our lives are all dried up, and why we are not moving forward, and we become frustrated because the people we are comparing to ourselves to are moving at the speed of light. Because of comparison and envy, we bring others along so we can gossip and tear down with our mouths and attempt to validate our own insecure thoughts. And because of this, it's really not the other person, but more about our own insecurity. And this behavior I see all the time. I've seen over the years. I've seen how people that get in that place of comparison and envy tear down people, tear down businesses, tear down churches, destroy ministries. You see, this happens so often in the house of God. Why? Because a lot of times you see a person has been serving a long time, and all of a sudden they see others surpass them, and they get into a really bad place in their heart. And the kicker is they are where they are because they refuse to submit to God's process of refining. They refuse to submit to God's character shaping, to God's molding. And what they don't realize is they are in a wilderness that they have created for themselves, walking around the same mountain over and over again. And it's no one's fault but their own, but they blame their boss, they blame their parents, they blame their pastors, their spouse, and sometimes because they don't want to be honest with the reality of their lives and the condition of their hearts, you'll hear them say the phrase, God has me in this place. When really it's a place they put themselves in. Am I helping somebody today? 2 Corinthians 10 and 12 says, but they measuring themselves by themselves and comparing themselves among themselves are not wise. Another version says without understanding, or they show how foolish they are. This scripture was Paul answering his critics who were making accusations against his character and who he was as a person. You see, they had their own faulty view of themselves and had set their own standard of how they measured others, by how they subconsciously viewed themselves, and they stepped into religious judgment. We cannot serve as our own standard, nor should we be the standard we judge others to in our place of comparison. And like Paul's critics, because of jealousy, in our comparison, we deem others as unworthy. But let me tell you, what God has ordained, no one cannot be destroyed. No one can destroy it with their mouths. No one can destroy it with their actions. We have to understand what we are doing when we get to this place of comparison and religious judgment. We are literally cutting off our own branches and stopping fruitfulness going on through in our own life. And now we get to a place where we're unable to bear fruit. Comparison hinders our fruitfulness, and this leads me to the third thing that hinders our fruitfulness: pride. Pride puts us in a place where we live according to our own standards, our own beliefs, our own understanding, our own set of rules that we make up for ourselves as we go through our life. And if we aren't careful, we will slip into a pattern of adopting scriptures and only parts of the Bible and thinking that the rest does not apply to us. We've got to know that God stands ready at all times to give us wisdom in abundance. But we have to admit that we need his wisdom for our lives and not a walk around being wise in our own eyes. Proverbs 11 and 2 says, when pride comes, then comes disgrace, but with humility comes wisdom. Let me tell you, pride is Satan's sin of choice in the life of a believer. And pride is number one on the list of the things that God hates. Pride is the sin that led Satan to rebel against God and set up his own rival kingdom. You see, the enemy uses pride to split a believer's life totally apart because he knows that the power of God will be hindered in his life if he can step in and influence him and bring him to a place of pride. Let me tell you, if the enemy wants to halt production in your life, he will, and put you in a dry and barren land. He will jump right into the battlefield of your mind and begin to speak things, begin to make you feel things, make you see things that will get you into a place of pride. And because he understands that pride comes before destruction, the enemy understands that that same pride is the first attitude that will disconnect you and put you independent from God.